And joining us now, Bruzzo, an attorney who is a consultant for the Democratic Party, and Wendy, a prosecutor and legal analyst. And I want to ask, I'll start with Will. Polls show that the vast majority of the American people, they want to see the Mueller report come public. What do you think will be the right process, though, to do it? To what extent should it become public?
Well, listen, I can't think of a more sensitive, important thing that's gone on in American politics than this interference by Russia in our election, plus any possible involvement by the president, his family, or the campaign team. So clearly, this is something that the American public need to know. I think what everyone is fearful of, at least on the Democratic side, is that if the report shows that there was collusion between Trump, his campaign team, or his family, that the Republicans are going to try to bury it or redact it or do whatever. And that's the great fear. I think that since we have the Democrats in control of the House, it's going to be very difficult for them to keep the Democrats in the House from seeing it. But I imagine that that's what the Republicans are going to try to do. They're going to try to do whatever they can to protect the president, regardless of what he's done, because that's been what they've been doing up to now.
And Wendy, regardless of what's in the report, you agree that it should be released, at least to Congress, right?
Absolutely. And Tal and David, one of the things that Will and I deal with as lawyers is redactions. Redactions cannot be done simply to protect somebody from embarrassing information. But given the scope of the Mueller probe, perhaps a redaction might be necessary to preserve national secrets, for example, proprietary information, things that have nothing to do with the guilt or innocence of the president, but have some national security concern. The problem with that is if we're not told why things are redacted, it's going to look bad. We're going to fear the worst, which is why at the very least, Congress will probably be in the know about everything. What's released to the public might not be as much as we want to see.
Well, William Barr, the president's pick for Attorney General, and I'm quoting, he said that his goal will be to provide as much transparency as he can with the law. Why is that not such a good enough answer for Democrats?
Well, I think it's a great answer for Democrats. Oh, sorry, was that to me or to Will?
Will, take it.
Yeah, so I think that it's because he's putting some limits on it. And, this whole hearing with Whitaker was, if I could make a baseball analogy, a brushback pitch. They're just saying, hey, you better not interfere with this investigation. The Democrats are very concerned that the Republicans do everything within their power to keep this information from coming out because they imagine there's a lot of damaging information. I mean, even things that we know now, we know that Paul Manafort, while he was a campaign manager, was giving polling information to Russian agents. We know that Trump's son met with Russian intelligence officials in Trump Tower. So there's a lot of damaging evidence. We imagine that's only the tip of the iceberg. So Democrats are concerned that the Republicans are going to try to put, or the Department of Justice under Donald Trump are going to try to cover this stuff up. So I think it's going to be very hard for them to do that. The House has subpoena power. So I think ultimately it's going to come out. And I think most Americans would trust that with the Democrats in charge of the House, that they're not going to be able to hide anything and that any redactions would be, as my colleague said, simply for national security reasons.
And Wendy, a lot of Democrats and Republicans were frankly concerned, I think, the other week when there was Matthew Whitaker saying that he expected that or believed that the final report will be coming soon, even though it's an ongoing investigation. You're not supposed to give any sort of timeline. He didn't make that mistake today. But how much trouble did Whitaker create for himself with Congress to begin with by making that mistake a few weeks ago?
Well, he did create a lot of concern because it's source credibility. He's in charge of the probe. He is the one that would know. He started off that press conference by saying that he'd been fully briefed. So he laid the table, or set the table, as the president likes to say, for really saying that, whatever he knows or doesn't know has source credibility. But also remember, he was very aspirational. He said, I hope we're near the end. I think we're going to see the end of it. That's no different than what Chuck Grassley says, that he thinks that we're going to see the result in a month. The difference is that today, during Whitaker's hearing, he certainly didn't hit it out of the park, since my colleague made a baseball analogy. But what he did is make it clear he did not talk to the president about the Mueller probe. He was crystal clear on that. I know he didn't want to answer those questions directly, but eventually all of that came out. So he doesn't know, supposedly, when it's going to end, and neither does the White House, if he's to be believed based on what he said today.
Will, do you believe him?
I believe that he doesn't know when it's going to end. Who knows what sort of scuttlebutt is around the Department of Justice if they're hearing things, but he made it clear that he was unsure when it was going to end and that he thought it should take as long as it needs to take. So I do believe him on that count.
Wendy, I have to ask you this. Between all of these investigations surrounding the president now, the Southern District of New York one, the Mueller investigation, and the one right now into his finances and maybe even tax returns, which one is the president mostly concerned about, do you think?
I thought you were going to ask me at the end of that, when does he find time to run the country, which I think would be a really good question, too.
It's called executive time.
Well, we saw the executive time report a couple of days ago, and that was something. But be that as it may, he's probably most concerned about the Mueller probe. Although I got to tell you, this is a man who spent his life being sued. I mean, he has been in and out of deposition for decades. So you got to wonder whether he's built up a level of tolerance. He must have, because he got a healthy physical today. So we know that he's weathering the storm in some sense. But he probably would just really like to focus on really helping Americans and making good on his campaign promises. The wall, jobs, lowering taxes, all of the rest of that.
Wendy, Patrick, and Will Bruzzo, good to have you both. Thank you so much.
Thank
When we
you.
come back.